Now usually I'm not a massive fan of 12-foot rods, but sometimes a set will come along that are very, very special. These ones behind me is one of them sets. Let's jump into the video and have a look. Now in front of me I've got two of the SCR ST12s. So if we break that down a little bit, SCR is the brand, which is South Coast Rods, which kind of makes these quite special because they're born and bred very close to me, and the guy that actually created these, or one of the two co-founders of South Coast Rods, I know quite well. He's fished the same sort of lakes as me, and I've always kind of known the name, and that's Graham, which we'll be meeting later. Some of you might know him as well because he's actually fished and still fishes for Team England as well, so I'm sure you'll recognise him when we meet him a bit later. But the ST12 stands for special taper, and obviously 12 being the 12-foot. Now there is an ST13 in this range as well, which we'll touch upon later, but mainly we're going to be sticking to the ST12. And it's rare that you get a 12-foot rod that really is a true all-rounder. Now these are 3.5 pound test curve. They're only available in 3.5 pounds, so it really is just one in the range. Like I say, there's one 12 and one 13-foot. I believe the 13-foot might be 3.75 pound, but I'll double check that. And yeah, like I say, it's rare to get a decent all-rounder. Normally, if you've got quite a high test curve 12-foot rod, it's going to be quite beefy, quite strong, and then that normally lacks when it comes to other areas, when it's playing fish under the rod tips, or if you're trying to kind of just have a more subtle approach of certain things. Normally compressing a 12-foot 3.5 pound test curve rod, you'd need a big lead to actually do that. But with these, they really are all-rounders. I've been pinging about 2-ounce leads today with fluorocarbon, so you don't expect great results from that, but I'm still hitting the far bank, which is probably about 100 yards. I'm not a massive caster, but to be able to do that, but also to know that you've got that backbone if you want to put a 4.5 ounce lead on something like that and go 150, 160 yards, all of that from one rod is pretty impressive. But that's all to do with the design of how these rods have been created. They're not using any blanks that are available on the market. That they have created their own blanks. So again, when we meet Graham, he'll tell us a little bit more about that because he's the guy that kind of knows everything, the ins and outs of these rods. But they have created their own blanks, so they're not using Free Spirit, they're not using Daiwa. It is South Coast Rods' own blank, which they've developed over time to make it as much of an all-rounder as possible. So yeah, that's a bit more, like I say, I'll pass that on to Graham because he'll be able to explain that better than me. But so far, since testing these rods out, I've been very, very impressed. So if we actually jump into a few of the specifics, the blank itself is made from a Japanese Toray carbon. And if you guys know your rods, you know that Toray carbon is probably the best carbon out there. So there's been no expense spared when creating these. And that's in a 1K carbon weave. And then following that back to the reel seat, that's also in a 1K carbon weave. So this allows a little bit more flex on the casting. It's not like you've got kind of metal reel seats or something like that doesn't allow any flex and ends up in flat spots. It's made from the same 1K carbon as the actual the rods themselves. And if we go down to the handles, it's actually a really nice EVA handle, and it's slightly different to the normal kind of Duplon that you'd find, where it's not spongy. It's actually a really tough, hard-wearing EVA handle. Like I say, you've then got the carbon reel seats, and you've got a nice matte black kind of collars on them to tie in, keep everything really subtle. There's a little bit of branding with the SCR ST12 just above the reel seat, and a very small kind of glossy bit just to enhance the branding. And then coming down the rest of the rod, it's really understated. You've got gloss black whippings, and then obviously the carbon weave follows throughout the actual rod. So really understated. It's a really cool looking set of rods, to be fair. The guides themselves are really lightweight guides, and they're a slightly different pattern. Whereas you normally have a 50mm butt guide, then it go 50, 40, 30, and so on. These actually go from 50mm to 30. So that keeps the rods a lot more lightweight because most of the weight of rods is actually in the guide. So by jumping down in stages like that, keeps them a lot lighter. And I have noticed that because I'm so used to using short rods myself that 12-foot rods normally feel big and bulky and they don't feel very nice to actually handle, but these are actually paired up really nicely with the reels, and they balance really well. They don't feel heavy, which obviously makes casting a lot easier as well. So the guides are actually TI forged air guides. So again, as well as the slightly different ringing pattern, you've also got a lightweight guide. So that's what really kind of enhances the balance of this setup. And like I say, these have been created to really be all-rounder kind of rods. So they're great for big leads at distance, they're great for solid bag work, and they're also great on smaller waters because they're just designed for modern day carp angling. So whether that means you're fishing a 120-acre reservoir or you're fishing a 2-acre weedy pit, they've been designed to cope with pretty much everything that you can throw at it. And they're not just big fish rods either. They can be used on, you know, a mid-double is going to put a nice bend in the rod because of how these blanks have actually been designed. They've got the power there when you need it, but they're also forgiving when you don't need it. So yeah, it's really hard to explain until you actually get a feel of these and get them in your hands and feel them on a fish, or, you know, do a few casts with them, that sort of thing. It's hard to get across just how flexible they are and how they really are all-round rods. The other nice thing about them is the price. Now, these are a high-end set of rods. Normally, the prices, you'd expect to pay high-end prices for that. But these come in at $299 a piece. And that is for one main reason, and one main reason only: South Coast rods sell direct to the buyer. So there's no tackle shops involved. So you're almost getting them trade price because they don't have to mark them up for the tackle shop to then be marked up again. So these are the equivalent of probably £500–600 rods, but at a much more affordable price tag. Now that's enough about me waffling on about these rods, because we've got to go and meet the man that knows everything about them, and that's Graham. So I'm gonna nip up to him. He's fishing a very different venue to this one, and I think it is about 120 acres, again with these 12-foot rods. So it really does show how different the application of these rods can be. And I'm going to wrap this up quickly as well because the rain's really coming in, so I'd rather get in the van and go down and meet Graham. Hello, hello.
How you doing, Luke?
How you doing, you all right?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good.
Oh, nice to see you.
Good to see you too. It's a nice spring day here.
Yeah, still a bit nippy, isn't it? But...
It is a little bit nippy, yeah, but it's looking good. There's a little bit of wind on the water, and yeah, just heard one slosh out around the corner as well, so it's all looking good, mate.
On the dance floor.
They are indeed, mate. They are indeed.
Right, well, obviously I've had my hands on South Coast rods. Mm-hmm. Tell me more about them. I've had my initial thoughts and got that out there, but how did the company develop to the point that you are now?
Yeah, no worries. So, where do I start? So around about 8 years ago, I think it was, we started selling free spirit rods, and we became sort of specialised in selling free spirit rods, and we grew a reputation of good customer service. You know, we're working with the guys up at Free Spirit, and around about 5 or 6 years ago, I think it was, I bumped into a chap called 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲 at Abbey Lakes, actually, over in France.
Oh, okay.
And we hit it off straight away. Stu was clubbing the fish up at one end of the lake. He was having, he had quite a few of the A-team members. I was down the other end of the lake. I had Maria out, which was, you know, like an awesome fish. And but halfway through the week, we got together for a bit of a social, and we just started chatting, and we really hit it off, you know. We sort of like...
You just click with some people.
Exactly, yeah, we just clicked. And it's really interesting because we're both different types of people, you know, but we just clicked straight away. Stuart's a very high-level product engineer, you know, and I come from a bit more of a sort of, well, I'm an angling coach by trade, you know, so I'm more of a people person, but we got together, we clicked, and we were chatting fishing, and when we came back from Abbey, I actually got together with Stu again and spoke to him about South Coast Rods, and he came on board as a fellow director of South Coast Rods. And I think that was about 2017, I think it was. And since then, you know, the brand's grown, you know, the website's developed, and around about 3 years ago, I think it was, Luke, we came up with the idea of, like, we wanted to develop our own range of rods.
Yeah, so that's obviously the ST range that we've been looking at.
Exactly that, the ST, and we started looking into it, and we started pouring hours and hours and our passion into designing what we consider to be the perfect big fish rod. Yeah. I say big fish rod, I mean more like modern day carp rod, because Now, carp fishing's developed over the last, 10, 7, 5 years. Now we're using sort of bigger leads, fishing for bigger fish, weedier waters.
Bigger waters.
Bigger waters like this, and even the smaller waters, they tend to be, you could be catching 40-pound fish from a heavily weeded water. It's only a couple of acres. Trying to get the drop on a 4-ounce lead on a Ronnie, on a little tiny spot and stuff. And traditionally, like if I go back to when I started carp fishing 30 years ago, we were using much lighter rods, lighter lines, smaller leads and stuff. Weren't using, solids as much. And we really started designing the STs from the ground up. And the focus of the STs was that we weren't going to look at how much it's going to cost us to produce it. We wanted to produce what we considered to be the ultimate modern day carp rods. And we brought them to market January this year, 3 months ago now, or 4 months ago now. The year's going quick. I'm super proud of what we've produced. Every little detail has been thought out.
I was going to say, so obviously I've kind of glossed over them at the start of this video when I went kind of hands-on with them, but you mentioned you started building with free spirit components and things like that, but this blank isn't anyone else's blank, is it? No. It's your own that you've developed.
Exactly that, yeah. So the blank, we've developed the blank from the ground up. So, this is our ST blank. People say, are you building on a free spirit blank or a Harrison blank or an Atrex blank and stuff? But we're not. This blank is unique to South Coast rods. We've built it from the ground up. And then all of the components, like I say, we started looking at all the components, playing around with them. We settled on ones that are durable, that are going to last a long time, that actually do what's expected of them. Like we've got the carbon reel seats in here, the carbon inlay reel seats. People are saying, put the black metal ones on there, they look cool. But I've got to be honest with you, we tried them and they don't allow the carbon to flex. They're obviously solid. So that creates a pivot point on the blank if it is touching the blank. And also just underhands, they get really cold, they're not that comfy. So we went for the carbon here.
Something I noticed with them, they're quite lightweight as well. Because I'm so used to short rods and like retractables and things like that. Normally when I pick up a set of 12 footers, I feel big and clunky and heavy, but these don't feel like that.
And that all comes down to the balance, you see. See, people say the heaviness or the weight. Now, it's not so much that, we're all capable of holding up, the weight of a rod, but it's the balance that you feel on it. So the fact that we use 40-ton Toray Japanese carbon, it's the, the highest quality carbon that we could get hold of to actually have these rods produced with. That cuts the weight down, but it's also the fact that the rings that we're using, we've gone for the Tyforge Air rings and we've gone for a 50-30 ringing rather than a 50-40-30. So what allows us to do
less metal, I guess, on the actual rings.
Exactly, and believe it or not, the actual wings, the rings do weight the rod down on the tip. So it's actually getting that balance right, and that's what you feel is when you pick them up, you feel that it's got the right balance. So what we've been able to do is create a rod that's got a very nice progressive power band in it. They are powerful rods. They're meant for modern day fishing, but at the same time they're light in the hand and very user friendly. And that was one of the things when I come on to like user friendliness. That's one of the things that we wanted to develop. We didn't want to develop a rod that could only be used in the casting field, or that was considered a broom handle and stuff. We wanted it for people like that's your size, my size. I'm 5'10", 13 odd stone. I wanted a rod that I could use and that the majority of anglers can use, rather than just having someone that's maybe like,
complete powerhouse and it's,
Exactly, but at the same time you could give it to them and they can cast it a long way. We've proved that in the field, but at the same time they're very user-friendly rods, and the way that we've played around with the taper and the actions and developed that, we're very, very proud of the way that we've managed to get a rod that will cast a long way but retains a beautiful playing action, and does give it that lightness as well in the hand.
So you said that you kind of created them. You wanted to create the ultimate rod without thinking about cost, but they're not actually that expensive. So how have you managed to kind of get that balance? Yeah,
well, this is like the uniqueness of South Coast rods, basically, Luke, is that South Coast Rods as a brand, we're all about customer service, always have been. We're a small independent brand, me, Stu, the rest of the ambassadors, you might have seen on the website, who else we've got part of the team and stuff. We're just all about, we're carp anglers and we're all about customer service. And when it comes to selling, we sell direct to our customers. So we sell through our website, everything gets put through South Coast Rods. So it means that we're able to offer the ST rod at like the 12 foot is 299, the 13 foot I think is 324, but we're able to offer it at that price point. Whereas if you were buying from a shop,
is that what you'd normally be selling them to a shop at, and then the shop does their markup as well?
Pretty much, yeah. Obviously, we have to pay for the postage and the cost and stuff in the warehouse, but you know that's minimal compared to what you'd have to pay for the markup of a shop.
Yeah.
And we've done that twofold, Luke. You know, like I love tackle shops. I absolutely love local tackle shops, and I'd hate to see them, you know, disappear because they're a vital part of our angling community. But the thing is when you actually go and start doing some research into your local tackle shops, especially your small independent local tackle shops, you've got all of your rods that are lined up on a rack, and you walk on in there and you've got, say, a Saturday staff member, and they're trying to sell you a rod that they've never fished with. They've never even put a reel on. They've never put the line through. And I know this firsthand because I've worked in tackle shops in my, you know, back in the day. So they've got no actual first-hand experience of that rod. And they hold the tip eye and say, put a bend in it. And you put a bend in it. Now, think about this, right? When a fish pulls on the end of the line, it doesn't hang on the tip, does it? No. There's a percentage, as the rod bends, there's a percentage of the pressure point that gets put on the tip ring, then as it bends more, it goes to the second ring, the third ring, and it progresses through the carbon and through the blank. So the only way that you can feel a rod is actually to put a reel on it, run the line through it, and then actually pull down on the line. And you don't get that experience when you go into a tackle shop. So what it becomes is you can see them and you can waggle them, and then a sales assistant can say, well, this one we recommend, or this one, but they've got no experience. So what we've decided to do is we decided to actually keep it all in-house, so we know our customers, we can keep in touch with our customers on social media, we can get feedback on our products, and we can grow a family, you know, and that's what we want to do is really create a nice family where, I love it, man. When we get a photo sent through from a customer and they're like, oh, gee, you know, like, thank you so much for the advice. You know, I went for the ST12s. I've just caught this, you know, new PB from a local syndicate. It gives you that buzz, you know, and that's what we want. You know, we're not doing it to make shed loads of money. We're not doing it because, you know, we want to develop hooks and we want to develop, you know, like bivvies and all this sort of stuff. You know, we are purely focused on bringing to market carp rods that we're proud of, you know, at a price point which people can afford. And with that carbon and with all the components and stuff like that, if we had to put a 40% markup on that to go into the shops, you'd be looking at probably paying around about £500 for them.
Quite a bit more, isn't it?
Exactly, which is up there with the price point of a lot of other brands that are producing a similar grade rod. But obviously you're paying that price through the tackle shops. And what I would like to, I will just add this on it as well, is that when you go into your small independent tackle shops, for them to stock a large range of high-end rods, you're looking at them taking up maybe like £6,000–7,000 worth of their bank account to get them into the tackle shop in the first place. That's a big ask for a lot of small independents to be holding stock like that of rods inside the shop. And then what you get as well is you get it gets to this time of year, coming out of the winter time, those smaller shops, they need to get cash back into the business because they've had a tough winter. So then all of a sudden you find that, you know, the rods will be discounted down by 30%, 40%, so they can get money back in. Then you start getting the other tackle shops that are saying, well, actually, you know, like, how come Joe's tackle down the road is selling them for 30% off? You know, he can't be doing that, and I'm selling for this. And all of a sudden you end up in this...
It's like this price war, isn't it?
Price warring, yeah, and you get, you know, so by having it all in-house, we can keep the price consistent, we can control the price, the product is the product, the price is the price, you know, and we can offer it at a good price to everybody, and that's and it's fair across the board. And yeah, so that's the sort of like unique nature of South Coast rods. Yeah,
nice. And obviously you mentioned the 13-footers. I didn't actually have that when I done my bit. You say they're pretty beefy.
The 13-footers, so it's interesting because when we were playing around with tapers, the carbon we use is an extremely fast and responsive carbon. So by that it means that when you cast it, when you use it, it responds very quick and comes back straight.
Snaps back.
Exactly, very fast carbon. However, the action of the rod is not what you would typically call a very fast action rod, which is a very J curve on it, okay? So that means that basically the tip of the rod bends, but then you lock up into power very quickly. And the reason for that is we've put in a bit more of a progressive power bend inside it to allow it to be more user-friendly. So rather than it sort of tip and then locking up and you feeling it on your arms and stuff, the actual blank will keep on bending, not through action, but progressive with the power. You know, it's a very powerful rod. So what it allows you to do is to get into the rod very easy if you're you know, our size, or you know, your casting technique is, I'm not going to say not great, but you know, you're not
the everyday angler can cast them a decent distance.
Exactly that, and enjoy using them.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we use rods to catch fish. There's no point having something that's like an absolute broom handle that, yeah, you can cast it away, but actually you're
not enjoying the process.
Petrified playing the fishing. We had one of our guys, Gary, was up at Linear, and he actually sent us a lovely little email the other day saying that he was fishing on, I think, B2 out in the middle of the lake, and he was fishing zigs, and he was actually fishing on light zig lines and small hooks, and he was like, I'm absolutely amazed at the fact that I can ping the leads out there and the rods will get the leads out right to the middle of the lake, but playing in these fish on light lines and small hooks, not once was he worried about, you know, being too overgunned with the rod. And that's exactly what we wanted from him, you know. So yeah, we've got the 12 footers, which have been designed for all-round multi-use fishing. You can use them on your smaller big fish waters, places like the boat pool up at Horton, those sort of, you know, ideal for that. Weedy waters, big fish, you know, but smaller, because they're still 12 foot in size, and you can still flick the leads underarm and stuff. And then the 13 footers have been designed more for sort of like bigger waters like this, where you do need a casting rod, but you also want something that's going to be able to play the fish in as well. So yeah, that's the two rods. We've only got the two rods. We've got the 12 foot, the ST12, the ST13. We haven't confused people by saying they've got all these different test curves, and we've got all these. We've got the ST12 and the ST13, and
that's all you need, isn't it?
Exactly, that's all you need. That's all you need. And we're honest people as well. Luke, you know I'm an honest person, and if you're looking at flicking 1 ounce leads with chod rigs, around a clear little club lake that's got no weed in it, and you're looking at catching 15-pound carp, you know, the ST12 wouldn't be the rod for you. You know, you'd be much better off fishing, you know, like a 3 1/4 or something like that, or a 3 pound, or maybe going down to sort of some smaller rods. But for the majority of people that we speak to, and remember, we've been doing this for a long time, selling fishing rods, you know, the majority of people, they come to us wanting a rod that will cast 3.5 to 4.5 ounces, that they can use solids on, they can use mesh bags on, and they can use as a sort of one rod does it all, you know, and that's what we brought to the table. That's what we tried to design from these ST rods.
Cool. Well, one last target for you then.
What's that?
50 wraps on the 13 footer.
50 wraps on the 13 footer.
50 wraps, I'll make a cup of tea.
50 wraps and you make a cup of tea. Yeah, go on in, I'll hold you to that one.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I've got one behind the bivvy. It's got my distance casting line on it, which is a 0.25 line on there. It's got a braided leader on it. I'll put a lead on there. And I know if I do hit this, if I do hit it, I know people think, oh, he hasn't got a rig on there and stuff. And obviously a rig will make it shorter. But if you can hit 200 yards with a lead, you can fish at 180 comfortably. Do you know what I mean? So let's go and have a little go, and you can put the kettle on.
Tea's on me.
Sounds good, mate. Right, here we go, Luke. First cast, 50 wraps. If I hit the clip on this one, you're making the bruise, mate, all right? Let's give this a go. Put the kettle on, boy.